Hello. Welcome to Authors Without Borders Presents. I'm the host for today's show, Joyce Keller Walsh, and my guest is Craig O'Connor.
Hello there.
Craig has had an interesting background, not only as an author, but also as a film editor, and we'll talk a little bit about that. He was born in Worcester, and he graduated from Stonehill College nearby, and then went to the University of Miami and graduated with an MFA in film. Tell us a little bit about that.
About University of Miami?
Yes, how did you happen to go there, and what was your interest in film at the time?
I love film. In fact, it's funny that we're talking about this now because, as you know, Roger Ebert passed away about 3 days ago, and the Siskel and Ebert show was one of the things that really got me loving film. I mean, it was just because they talked about it so well, and they were funny, and you know, there was a part of me that wanted to be a part of that world, and also the writing aspect. I wanted to make up stories, and filmmaking and directing is another version of writing. You know.
And is that what they taught at?
Yes.
And both writing and directing.
The writing and directing, and how to work a camera, where to place the camera, and all the rules. And it's funny because film school, there's only a few set rules that you need to know, and I've for years been playing with the idea of creating a website called 5-Minute Film School. So basically, this tells you everything you need to know, and then the rest is just if you're any good. You know, it's just practice and seeing if you have any good ideas and stuff like that. Because there are just a few basic rules that you need to know about script writing, about how to place the camera, screen direction, things like that. And it was probably the best time I ever had in life so far. It costs a lot of money, which I'm still paying off, but it was definitely the best time, and I made a short film called Mild-Mannered Man, about a man who's arrested for eating with bad table manners, and he's conditioned to eat with good table manners. He picks up the wrong fork in the simulation. He gets an electric shock and things like that. So,
and this was as part of the program to be shown, or is this afterwards? When did you do this?
It was part of the program. That's how you had to graduate. You need to make your film. And I made my film and graduated, and then basically about a year later was off to California.
That's what I was going to ask you. How long between the time you graduated and the time you went to LA?
It was about a year. I was simply a bit scared, you know, even though I was living in Miami and not really making much money. You know, the idea of moving somewhere else, either New York or Los Angeles, was a little bit scary, a bit daunting.
Did you have a job to go to, or did you just land and decide to look around?
Yeah, it kind of landed, looked around a bit, and lived off the money that I was given to buy a car with, which was difficult. I did get a writing job pretty quickly.
How?
I answered an ad in Variety, and it was a gentleman who wanted me to write a screenplay about, oh boy, it was about snakes.
On a plane? No.
No. In fact, that would have been a great idea. No, this was snakes on a ski slope. In fact, that would have been a good title. We called it Snow Snakes, but it was about these snakes that eat plastic, and they were like an experimental thing, and then they get bigger, so naturally they're eating the skiers as they come down the slope.
Yeah, let me step back a moment. Just say that Craig's genre, although it spans several different things, including mystery, is really very focused on horror.
Oh, yes.
So we'll get back to that later.
This was not my idea. This was not my idea. I was just asked to do it, and none of the script didn't go anywhere, obviously. It basically just wound up, you know, working at a video store around the time that DVD started coming out, which was okay because it was an industry store. So lots of famous people would walk in all the time. And, you know, I met people like Cuba Gooding and Burt Reynolds and Danny DeVito, and yes, he is that small, and most of them very nice people. You know.
And how did you get then a job as video editor?
That came through meeting a gentleman who owned a production company. One of the jobs I had, sort of a moonlighting job, was working in a small music club, and I was the sound editor. I was the sound man and the show host, and there was a gentleman who would come in, played guitar, sang funny songs, and turns out he owned his own production company and in Burbank, and so, you know, we got to know each other. I said, could you use, you know, an assistant? And he said yes. In fact, he was working on this show called Street Music Los Angeles, which was about the clubs in LA and all the people playing there. And together, I was the editor, and together we made 4 episodes, which we got one of the local channels to play, and we wound up winning an Emmy for that series, even though we only did 4 episodes. So I have an Emmy statue at home.
Congratulations!
With my name on it.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
Where did you go from there? How did you parlay that into the next step?
The next step of, well, by the time I was there for about 5 years, and by the time things weren't, didn't go incredibly well with the company, and after that, basically did a lot of temping. But there was a time period when I was between jobs, and where I'd written this actually, and I'd finished it. This being Happy Holidays. This is a collection of short stories. Suspense short stories, sort of Twilight Zone type stories. Each one takes place on a holiday, and so that's the theme that goes through it. And someone at a local bar that I used to go to, who also was a writer, said, why don't you try self-publishing? And I was like, the old stories about, you got to buy 1 million copies up front, and you have to keep them in a storeroom somewhere, and who has the money for that? But he says, no. He says, try going through Amazon, which is CreateSpace. The company they own is CreateSpace. So like I said, I was out of work, so I had the time. Turns out it wasn't an expensive thing to do. They're print on demand, so you can buy 5 if you want, and you get them at cost. And I got a what do you call it? Microsoft Publisher, the software, so I could do the layout. And I couldn't afford it, so I got a 60-day free trial. Sat down, taught myself how to do that, and within a month of signing up with CreateSpace, I had this book.
Now, did you choose the cover? How did the cover come about?
The cover is one I designed myself. I have some knowledge of, well, I won't call it design. I know how to work Adobe Photoshop. This is basically throwing ketchup at a calendar, photographing it, and then putting it in Photoshop, because the photograph made the calendar look yellow and the ketchup look brown, and it wasn't any good. So basically just redoing it, using that as a guideline, redoing it so it came out looking reasonably nice. And most of the covers are ones that I've done myself, with the exception of The Monster of Modern Times. This was done by a graphic designer.
This is a particularly interesting cover.
Oh, you like that one, do you?
Yes, I do. Did you design that?
Yes, that's my arm. It's me doing that.
I don't know if people can see that closely, but you can always go to your website and have a better look, which is
www.craigo'connor.info. craigo'connor.info.
And it's a very, very colorful website. I urge you to take a look at it. Now, you were still in Los Angeles when you published your first book.
Yes.
And then, did you come back to Massachusetts right after, or
no,
how long did you stay there?
I was still hopeful that there would be some. But by that time, the time I published was 2009, and so the recession had begun, and we didn't know how long it was going to last, and it's still going on. But I didn't come back to Massachusetts till 2010, by which time I had so much fun publishing Happy Holidays that I said, I want to do this immediately. I want to do it again. And as luck would have it, about 3 years earlier, I'd written The Whitechapel Five, which was my first novel. I'd written this, and it had been in the drawer, or on the computer drive, so to speak. Nothing was happening with it. And I said, well, why not? I've got a completed book. And 3 months after Happy Holidays, The Whitechapel Five came out.
Now, did you use an editor for that, or just wrote it up yourself?
I wrote it up myself. I found that the best way, you definitely need money to get a really decent editor, to do a good job. And if you get members of your family or your friends will do it, they mean well, but they won't catch everything. And also, since you're not paying them, they'll say, oh yes, I want to do it, but I'm reading this right now. I just got a book out of the library, and it's due back in 3 days, and then they get another book out of the library. So it'll sit on their shelf for a long time.
And it costs, what, up to maybe $500 or better to get a good editor?
To get a yes. Because I've had, I've met editors, and they've made offers, and I always feel bad to say, I always say, don't think I don't have a need for you. I'm not one of these people saying, I don't need anybody. But it's just, money's tight in the recession.
Now, did you attempt to have any of your short stories published elsewhere before you had them in a collection? So such as horror-based or mystery-based magazines?
I did. Didn't have a lot of success at it. None whatsoever. But that's the wonderful thing about living in the modern era. And I'm very down on my modern era. I'm always thinking, things are never as good as they were back in the old day. But especially in LA, I was meeting people who, because of all the tools you have at home with computers, I met musicians who were recording their albums at home and pressing them up at home and going out to clubs and selling them. You know, they weren't going through a label or a recording studio or anything. Filmmakers were making their films at home and putting them on YouTube or any of the other video sharing sites. And I said, well, and no one is saying, once upon a time, this was known as vanity
press.
It wasn't looked at as like, oh, you haven't been given the nod by a publishing company.
And also, it cost a lot more back when it was vanity press.
And it was back then it was looked down on, and nowadays nobody looks down on it because this is just the way everyone's working now.
Right.
Is now you can actually do it at home and just put it out, and it feels good. You know.
How are you marketing it? That's the thing. That's the hard part. Because even if you go to a traditional publisher, you have to market your own books.
You do, yeah. It's not an easy thing to do. As you know, I come on shows like this and smile into the camera and just be generally charming and witty, but just trying to talk about it wherever you go. You know, putting it out on. I mean, these books are available on Amazon, but they are. You know, it's a big store. It's a big area. Right. You know, you got to get people to look at.
Right.
Look for you.
Are they also available in certain bookstores?
There are a couple of bookstores that are stocking them right now, sort of in my general area of where I live.
In Easton?
Paperback Junction. I don't know if you know of them.
I don't, but
they are.
Some of our viewers might.
Yes, it's a great place, and support your local bookstores.
Yes, absolutely. Well, there aren't enough of them anymore. As you know, the brick and mortar stores are going by the wayside.
That is one of the things about the modern era that I'm not happy about. You know, I love a good bookstore to just go and spend some time at, and nowadays if you're a little bit bored at home and what do you want to do? So, well, you can't go to a bookstore, can you? You know. Now,
do you use the social media, tweeting, Facebook, blogging to promote your books?
I use Facebook, LinkedIn, which is a great resource. Facebook is a lot of fun. You know, you have to compete with the pictures of the cute dogs, but you know, it's fun to put that out there, especially to meet up with, say, people that you haven't spoken with since high school, and they say, well, what have you been up to? I've been up to this, you know.
Now, they're available both as print and ebooks, or print only?
All four is print. The first two, Happy Holidays and the Whitechapel Five, are also available as ebooks. You can get them on Amazon. And I haven't yet converted the last two. I'm just basically want to see how the first two are going to sell. What
is that process of converting? Take us through the entire thing. You have the software to conform to the uploading.
I have a feeling I'm going to steer you the wrong way, because I've been told that there's there's software now to do it. And when I did it, I just basically I went line through line to set up the format, because I know a thing or two about HTML. And so I sort of set it up as HTML, as basically a website. And it was a long process for both books. And
now, you have an undergraduate degree in computer science, right?
Computer science.
So it'd be a little easier for you than for some others.
This was back in the early 90s when computers were, you know, there wasn't, Windows didn't even exist in 92 or whenever that was. So there was a lot of, as with anyone who knows anything about computers, you have to keep learning. You know, you have to keep expanding your knowledge and trying to get on top of all the new ways. And I think the brand new software for ebooks is probably something I'm going to have to look into soon.